and then bend that back straight. Getting closer. Put a little pressure right here. And I can start working this to where it's not curved and to where it's straight. This video is going out to my fellow fly press lovers, my fellow blacksmiths, those who like to work the metal in the analog style. To my machinist friends, you can stick around if you want to, but this is going to be maybe for you a boring show and tell about this beast right here, my number 5 Karachi Fly Press. Bought this, let's see, late summer 2022. Okay, from Blacksmith Supply. Got a pretty good deal on it. They did me good on the freight. Delivered to my home was ridiculous. So we found a place nearby that I could drive in my pickup. They shipped it there, a little freight receiving and distribution center, and I was able to pick it up and bring it here myself. When I got this fly press, obviously it didn't have any tooling. And it was a pain. It was a pain to put together and move. I rented an engine hoist from Ace Hardware to move it in position. I customized and built this base myself. I was inspired. You know, there are a lot of people online. People have been using these for decades, for centuries. So I was inspired by some of the designs on there online. Mine's a little taller because I'm a little taller. My back is always giving me grief. So I try and get my workbenches to a comfortable height, so where I'm not bent over or extended. So this one works well for me. A little taller. The ones I found online were a little squatter, a little wider. So this one works for me. And you can see by the construction that I was taking into account the fact that as I pull this thing, I'm going to have some torsional forces operating down into the base and into the floor. And so you'll see here that I've got it pinned in 2 positions. 2 feet are pinned in with 3/8" bolts, where I drilled into the concrete and then used anchors to bolt this bad boy down. It's totally movable. 2 nuts, and I could move it if I wanted to. But so far, you know, after almost 2 years, after a year and a half, it's good where it is. As far as tooling goes, I'm actually very pleased with the tooling that I've made so far. I'm not pleased with my organization, save these punches right here. The rest of it is, you know, it's a soup sandwich. It's going everywhere. Nothing's contained. So I do want to come up with some kind of different storage, especially for these larger tools, some way to store these things and keep this table free. You know, any horizontal surface in a shop, you know, it's always going to get crap on there unless there's a place for it. So probably the first thing I made for my fly press was a Touchmark. This is actually a spare Touchmark. This is the other one's actually in the press right now, but I did this on my CNC mill. First project. It's out of S7 steel. No, scratch that. It's out of H13 steel. Okay, heat treated and tempered in my heat treat oven. I haven't needed to use this yet because the other one's holding up so well. My Touchmark symbolizes my first and last name, as you can see here. It's the power symbol on its side, but here it looks like a G. My first name is Garen, and then the power symbol, power, you know. Kind of like the artist formerly known as Prince. I've got my own symbol, power, sideways. And so here you can see that I've got it in the fly press. I've got it's indexed on this side of the collar. And depending on what I'm putting a Touchmark on, most of the time this little train bearing works well. You know, I can adjust it from side to side. If it's a blade, if it's got other features, I can put it down or put it where I need it. It's a heavy little bugger. And then put my punch mark in. For example, when I'm putting a Touchmark in a railroad spike, I just put it on my little mini anvil like this, and voila, I got my mark. Works out pretty well. I don't know if you can make that out, but like with all things, the steadier my hand is, the better the result. All right, so moving on. Let's talk about this other train bearing that I converted into, well, two different things, really. This side, I've got a round, I milled in a half of a hemisphere, I guess, or half of a circle. And then I use this piece of steel. It was already round, and I just modified it by hand to fit in here so that I could punch spoons, coffee spoons, actually. Now on the other side, this side it has a square corner, and this was actually my first attempt at putting in, creating some kind of indexable seat for coin dies. For example, this first coin die I made that says, this is the bottom part, 1 given. It fit in there perfectly with no slop. And then I could align it with the top die, then using these toe clamps and this machined shoulder right here, I could fix this in place. Usually I put one on this corner, one in that corner. That was the idea, and it didn't work. This is about 1.57 inches, 40 millimeters, and this little number 5 fly press just didn't have enough oomph to really do it in any material that I tried. It's just too big. And through experimentation since then, I found 1 inch and below it can probably handle. So let's show off this a little bit. Let's set up this side with the little coffee spoon bottom swage, I guess you could call it, I don't know. Let's set this up and see how that works. So let's get this Touchmark out of here. I've got 2 grub screws that hold these bits in, one on either side. The reason I did it that way is some of my tooling isn't exactly 1 inch OD. Some of it's smaller, like this part we're putting in, and so I wanted a way to, at least from 2 different directions, somewhat center that in there. Which, actually, I forgot to even mention this. I made this, I guess you could call it a little chuck, whatever you call it. I made this by looking at a picture. I think they're for sale on Blacksmith Supply, and I'm sure they're a great deal out of better steel than this, but I didn't want to pay the $65 or $50 or whatever it is. 20 would have been too much at the time. I'm cash poor right now. I'm in retirement. Everything's paid for, but I gotta live with a budget, and it's fun to make this stuff. So I turned this on the lathe. I had some old, pretty thick square stock. Turned this out on the lathe so that I could have my own little fly press tool holder. So let's get that back in here. And if I were to do it again, I wouldn't do it in mild steel, but as a proof of concept, as a learning experience, this has been awesome. So let's go ahead and put this bad boy in here. Shoot one side in, then the other. Okay. And then if I'm doing a large batch of these bad boys, then I would toe clamp both sides of this down, okay? Which for me consists of, and I'll put it on this side so you can see. Obviously you want the back side a little taller than the front. Oh, I need a longer one. A little longer than the front. Sorry, you want this backside a little taller than the front to get proper leverage. And then I've got a little thick washer and a stud to go into this fixture plate that I made. And that's another thing I made for this fly press. I had some extra plate steel, 3/4 inch thick, laying around the shop, and I thought, you know, why not make a fixture plate for this so that I could attach all of the tooling that I make in the future. And so far I just have 2 or 3 things that this will work with, but it's awesome. I love it. So pretend that's attached. Let's punch a coffee spoon. So here's a blank, a perfect blank for a spoon, and I'll make them out of this size, or you can make them a little longer depending on what you want to do. But right now, this measures 2 inches. This is 2 inches in diameter. And once punched, this is what it looks like. Just a perfect little round shape. And it's about 1 tablespoon. Little rivet that I did cold there. So the process is easy enough, right? You want to center that on that bad boy best you can. That's why it's good to have oversize. And this is actually going to get stuck. Let me get some WD-40. One problem with using an exact measurement, this can easily get stuck in there. You can get it out, but let's try and not get it stuck in the first place. Don't know if this is going to work, but we'll give it a shot. Ready? Well, that didn't work. All right, so this is not bolted down, but let's see if we can ease our way into it so we get a little spoon shape. Here we go. Usually I can go faster than this, but again, this is not secure. This needs to be secure. But there you go. Let me let this down. That worked not too bad for this moving around like that, but you get the point. Get this perfectly in place so nothing moves, and you end up with a shape. And you end up with a shape like that. Rush it and and don't bolt it down, and you get a little, kind of looks like a little ball cap. That's kind of cool. All right, let's move on. Those of you who've watched some of my videos this year or last year will probably recognize this. This little tool is for punching 1/4 inch wide by about 3/4 inch long slots. When I use it to punch bottle cap openers. And this went through several integrations. It was a great opportunity for me to do some problem solving, some inventing on my own part. You know, I'm the type of guy who, instead of goes online or looks at a bunch of YouTube videos to figure out how to do something, I like to, you know, think of, what do I want? How do I think I can get there? And then problem solve. What can I do? What can I make to make that product? Sometimes I'll look for a little bit of inspiration, but a lot of times it's most fun to just do it yourself. So this allowed me to make mistakes along the way and then learn valuable lessons on the way. By making these spacers, for example, by how I'm going to feed my work into these different sections. You know, what do I need? What can I automate, and what do I need to do by feel? And as you can see here in this clip I have from one of my previous videos, it cuts through material like butter. It's held up to well over 100 punches in the last few months. And here's the punch that I made, which you can see in one of my last videos on this particular tool for the Fly Press. This punch has done, and it's still in great condition. Made out of H13 steel, a combination of lathe work, mill work, and then just some TLC on a grinder. Got me that. Works beautifully. So let's throw this in here. I'm going to show you how this die fixes to this fixture plate. So I've got this in a few different pieces here. All right. I've got these spacers, first of all, and these spacers allow a cavity for when I punch let's say a bottle cap opener, the slug's going to exit the bottom, and then I can use a piece of flat bar to eject that punch out the back. One of my problems early on was just not having a way to eject these slugs. You know, sometimes you just can't think of everything. So I'm just going to try and line this up the best I can with the hole. There we go. And then line these holes up. And then once everything's in line, then these little socket head bolts go in there, and then they tie it all together. And once again, this thing has been an absolute champ. Definitely one of the best tools that I have made for my fly press. It is, number one, it's worked, it's solved the problem. Number two, it's been absolutely durable. Next, let's talk about something that I think anyone with a fly press has, and that's some kind of contraption, some kind of fixture to bend metal. And this is a setup where you generally would bend metal cold. Now, obviously, this isn't very thick steel, but you get the general idea. But by placing it here, you can bend it to a radius that you want. Okay. Then I like to use this smooth. I like to be able to slide this around and then really get in if I want to put it in a pinpoint area to bend, so I can get this closer to this to get a different bend. So for example, that's a little curved this way, right? So maybe I could get in here and then bend that back straight. Get in closer, put a little pressure right here. And I can start working this to where it's not curved and to where it's straight, or maybe I want it curved. Either way, this for me so far has been a really great setup to make that work. And of course, this is what, like a 2 5/8 inch ball, some kind of big ball that I found at a flea market. And then this is mild steel, just some 3/8 plate with some 5/8 or 3/4 inch round that I welded on there. Whatever, a lot of this stuff I just make with what I have laying around. Let me loosen this. Oh, nice. And so you can see this used to be a hitch. I just cut it off where I wanted it, put a nice little chamfer on there. And I think with these threads, maybe I should grind some of these threads off so it won't get wedged in there next time. All right, so the next tool that I made was this little, jogger, whatever you want to call it. I make a lot of shelves, okay? So say you have a bracket, another bracket, and you have a flat bar that you want it to transition from this plane up the thickness of the stock over to this plane, so you can rivet it to your bracket or whatever, right? You're doing gates, you're doing shelves, whatever it might be. Sometimes you need to shift. And so this tool allows me to shift the material up 1/4 inch, okay? So this is the long part of the material, and then it's going to forge up and then out, like so. Again, I cobbled this together from just crap and scraps that I had laying around, and so far it has worked out really well. So got a nice short heat here. Obviously, if this were real, I'd have this marked where I'd want it, little side center punch mark. And then I just jog it down where I want it. Now, key things to remember when setting this up, which I did not do, the space between here and here, this bottom swedge and this top swedge, should be roughly the thickness of your stock. If you don't do that, you're going to get this pinch like I have here. Way to go, Garen. That's pretty darn cool though, that pinch. Let's loosen these guys up just a little bit. And create a little space in here. About that much space. Okay, so we've got some space in there. Let's try this again. Place it where you want it. And jog. Now the hardest thing for me here is, you know, I'm not that coordinated and I'm blacksmithing, but holding one hand steady while pulling on the other. I find when I do these, I often employ my wife to come out and help me, and she'll either do one or the other so that I can make sure that this is a success. So the last tool I'll talk about that I've made for the Fly Press is this bender. I actually like this tool the least. It works, but I'm not a fan. So I've got this top part. Again, this is made out of scraps that I had around the shop. I had a lot of this angle from making this fly press table, and so I thought if I made a 90-degree V here for the bottom, and then I've got my 90-degree here. If I press those together, then I'd have a right angle, right? And it works. But it's a little cumbersome, and I think if I had less distance here, a smaller angle, maybe made out of solid 4140 steel, okay? And then if I had a more precise knife-like top tool to get into there, that would be much better. And I've seen that in the past. I've seen that now on websites or whatnot for sale. And I think people know what they're doing. That they've done it that way for a reason. But then I have this piece of metal back here. So when I come in, now again, I'm a one-man shop most of the time, so it's really hard to hold 5 things at once with 1.5 hands. So when I put this metal in, I have something to back up against, okay? Because I want it to be square and perpendicular and parallel and everything as much as possible. So this will go back and register there, and then this piece will come down and form this 90-degree bend that I want. Now I've done this over the anvil, made these. This is a shelf bracket, by the way, to put on the wall. I've done these over the anvil. I've done it in a vise. I've done it in the 50-ton press, but even though I don't like this top and bottom setup, so far, this is the best way that I have for doing this operation. And then right here, I have this slot milled in so that I can go straight in and button it up. And it's movable as needed. I can put a toe clamp on there if I want to, but it works great. And I've actually also used this for railroad spikes for making simple hooks. And as you can see here, I've got all of my 2x72-inch grinding belts organized on these railroad spikes, and it did a perfect job. This did an absolute perfect job at that. Well, that wraps it up, guys. That's what I've come up with so far. A few tools that I really enjoy. They really make my life easier, make blacksmithing a lot of fun. The fly press is definitely a great tool to have in the shop. It's controllable, it's smooth, it's not loud, and it just takes a little bit of this power, right? It doesn't plug in. So the question is, going forward, what tools do I need to make, right? How do I organize this better? Do I weld something on the front, on the side? Do I put something on the wall? These are all great problems to have, and I look forward to solving them in the future. As always, thanks for tuning in. We'll catch you on the next one. Bye.